but on the other end of the spectrum, it's much easier to find me than it is to find somebody in New York City.
We're going to devote our energies to sports and gardening, all the cultural pursuits as far as they're concerned. In fact, we're going to put the goons to sleep. Meanwhile, we dig.
Greetings and welcome to the Anadromist. This is Byrne Power coming to you again from Tbilisi, Georgia. I've got my cat. It's not mine. He's the local, one of the many local cats. Mego, short for Megobrebi, Megobari, which means friend. He's my friend. And I've got an interesting episode for you today of Anadromous Dialogues. A couple of weeks back, I was talking with a friend of mine back in Alaska, a guy named Ashley, lives in a cabin in the middle of the woods. And as I was talking to him, I thought, you folks should also be introduced to Ashley. He's an interesting guy. And I thought, let me just, see if he wants to do it. He did. And he's sort of become, over the years, a digital Alaskan hermit. And what I mean by that is he's definitely connected through the internet and all of that, but he's staying away from people for reasons I'll let him explain in the video. But I think you'll find this fascinating, a peek into a different part of the universe, so to speak. By the way, if you appreciate this and like dialogues, let me know. You can subscribe to the channel. You can hit like, which helps the algorithmic deities send more people my way. You can leave a comment, which also does that, but has the extra added function of allowing you to interact in some way with me. And I think Ashley will be looking in as well, because he's got a YouTube channel called Hermit Lion, and I'll put a link to that below. Also, he's got another channel for his blogs, and you can find those links below in the description section. Okay. Without any further ado, let's go to Haines, Alaska.
Well, I've got my friend Ashley here today with me. Ashley is a good friend back in Alaska who lives in Haines and has been there for, how many years have you been there?
11.
11. So I've known Ashley a good chunk of those 11 years. And Ashley has been in the last, how many years have you been living out there by yourself?
Out this way, 8.
8. How long have would you classify yourself as a hermit these days?
Absolutely.
Absolutely. And how would you define that? You go into town sometimes, but basically, what are you doing?
Well, this month of August, I've been into town once. Mm-hmm. Most of my time is spent online, in all honesty. I for the first, between May and November of last year, I spent every waking hour. I had a screen on my computer, a screen on my phone, a screen on my iPad, and a screen on my television with split screens, and I was watching protests across the country. Mm-hmm. Every waking hour for more than 100 days. Right. I dig into, left and right, more radical news sources, as well as mainstream. Right. I watch a lot of C-SPAN. Okay. I'm pretty weird. Let's put it that way.
Well, you're almost like a digital hermit.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
But you are like doing stuff like, how are you living in your day-to-day stuff as far as cooking and heat and all of that sort of stuff?
Yeah, so it's a good question. I do fish some. I do can some food and smoke some salmon and things, but I, like most other people, I'm totally connected to the network of economy. We've all been raised dependent this way, and it's really hard to untrain yourself there. I boil my food.
Do you cut wood? Heat yourself with how do you heat yourself?
I actually don't cut wood. I actually have a Toyo stove. I use diesel.
So
yeah, I grew up cutting wood.
Right.
I spent a lot of time at my grandparents as a child. We didn't get electricity until like 93 down there.
Right.
But no, I'm very, people like to say, you don't have running water. You get your water from the creek. Therefore you're out of society. But I really don't think you ever can be, really. There's really nowhere to go outside of the reach. I hope I'm not presenting this badly.
No. I'm just, I mean, I know how you're living, but a lot of other people, like for instance, then the next question is, well, okay, so you own your own property.
No.
So you're renting?
I've been renting. Yes. They'll never sell it. They grew up here. So I don't think they're in any hurry to get me out of here, but if I was them, I wouldn't sell it
either. How
either.
are you paying for yourself?
Well, this last year and a half, 2 years, it's been really hard. I've pretty much, in the wake of all this COVID business, have lost everything. I've lived off of all of my savings. I began buying and selling day trading cryptocurrencies to buy groceries. It's really, really tough. It's really tough.
Well, you were doing the occasional job doing accounting.
Yeah. I was a tax accountant for a lot of years. I grew up kind of doing that as a punishment for not staying in school.
Right.
And I've really let that go. I did have a business here in town, but the more I learn and the more I read, I can't reconcile myself to helping pay for bombs anymore. I just, part of my coming to Alaska to begin with was to get away from the tax system itself. And
do me a favor, the word you just used, say something like devices.
Devices. I have a list. I do.
Instead of the B word.
The B word.
Yeah, the thing which would be explosive.
I don't know what I said. I'm sorry for that.
With a B and an O and an M.
Oh, gotcha.
Gotcha. Yeah, because the YouTube algorithms will make you, they won't censor you, but they'll make this, what is it? They'll make it like adults only. And this is what just happened on my recent video, because I dealt with so much of the stuff that was happening in the last 10 years, and there was just so much craziness. Plus I had a lot of curse words. I just said, okay, at a certain point I was thinking of editing it. There's one clip in there you can hear me making words go backwards and stuff, but the occasional word or whatever doesn't trigger them, but certain words like
are bad.
Words like what the people who ran the planes into the World Trade Center that starts with P.
Yeah, don't use that word.
Yeah. They're just certain words that we would normally use, and we could use them, but the more you use those, the more it triggers off the blind idiot gods of the algorithms.
And this really points to what I've been coming to terms with, which is we have this morality that seeks to enforce itself upon us. I mean, very much the algorithms and the overlords of the techopolies want to create enemies and create these T words out of nothing.
Right.
They want to say you are not in line, therefore we must come after you. And a lot of my time here in the last year and a half is just waiting for somebody to show up on my property to do me harm for their just and moral reasons.
Yeah.
It's a very, very, very crazy time.
Right. Are you still out at Letnikoff Cove?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's, by most standards, that's fairly remote. I mean, first someone would have to get all the way to Haines, Alaska, which is 1,000 miles from Seattle. And then they'd have to like find you, because one thing most people don't realize is that if you say, what's Ashley's address, people are going to look at you like, huh? Because
I don't even know my address.
Nobody has an address. Yeah, I used to just make one up, because in Alaska we all had just mailboxes, and you go check your mailbox, but we would have to explain to people all the time. I don't know how many times over the years I've had to explain that, no, I don't really have an address, but they say, well, we need one to send the UPS shipment. So I say, okay, fine. And I just make one up out of the top of my head, because I know what would happen when the box got here. Someone would just call me and say, hey, Byrne, you got a box. You want to come get it?
But on the other end of the spectrum, it's much easier to find me than it is to find somebody in New York City. Just by process of elimination of the amount of people.
Oh yeah, I've often thought if a person really wanted to get lost, they'd go to the South Bronx.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think there is a form of naivete that we have, that these harmful aspects of our humanity aren't coming, that they won't come to me. I do believe that's a little naive, just because of I watched your number 12 video, which was extremely impressive. Anyone who is interested in the modern day processes of thought and morality or whatever, I'm not very smart, but should watch it. Yeah, they should take the time.
How we got here, number 12.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, it just, yeah.
Yeah.
Because I was watching all of this stuff as it unfolded, and watching since even before then.
Right.
And
well, you were telling me you were watching things like Gamergate and the Great Meme War and all this sort of stuff unfolding. And I came in on that conversation a little bit later. I didn't really start noticing it till around 2016. And even then, it was like people would refer to these things and it'd be like, Gamergate, what is that? But what I quickly learned is if you went to the Wikipedia page on this stuff.
Oh, Wikipedia is.
It was, and in fact, most recently I saw there was some sort of little box saying it has been suggested this be called the Gamergate harassment campaign.
Yeah.
Which is the opposite of what it was. I mean, there were some really stupid people. There
was harassments coming from both sides.
Oh, exactly.
Yeah.
And but what most people don't realize is that something like that was really one of the first shots in the contemporary culture war, and which is very different than the one, say, that we grew up with in the 90s. Yeah. Now that one was very much, you had your right-wing kind of conservatives and Christians on one side, and then you had the usual suspects of, the gay folks and lesbians and, punk rockers and all sorts of other people.
Young Washingtonian kids.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. But this has actually done something very interesting by bringing many people together who would have been opponents at that time together, because this new thing is so weird and just enveloping. And so, I mean, for me, one of the best aspects of this, and one of the things that gives me hope, is that these people from the old culture war are talking. Not all of them, obviously, but enough that you can see there's real dialogue. And it's really interesting for me to see someone like Ariel Scarcella, who's like a total lesbian, tattooed up the wazoo. But she said, I can't take the LGBTQ stuff anymore. It's just gone insane. And she's being interviewed by someone like Lauren Chen, who's like a Catholic Christian, or I don't know if she's Catholic, but she's definitely some sort of Christian. And, every now and then you can hear there's a tension point where they get to like lifestyle stuff, but then they kind of dance around it and keep going because this other thing is so big.
It's pervasive.
Yeah.
And in Gamergate and in Occupy, I went to 6 different ones at the tail end of it there. What's really alarming is you're not allowed to say that people are wrong on both sides.
Mm-hmm.
You are only allowed to say, my side is acting correctly, your side is acting incorrectly. You're not allowed to have any nuance to these discussions whatsoever, even within your own in-groups.
Right.
And this is my major warning I've been trying to get out, is this pendulum swings back and forth, and the power structure swings back and forth. And we ourselves become this very oppressor we're fighting against when we decide to enforce our moral will.
What do you mean?
Well, specifically, like I have a relative who's in the military, and they're a Christian person, a good person, a thoughtful person, but they very much want to create laws and police forces to enforce this higher standard of morality, much more than murder is bad, much more than stealing is bad. And they want to put that out there. And I keep telling them, like, how is this different than people wanting to enforce their left morality? You are trying to push upon another what is right and wrong by way of a gun, instead of saying we have the better way, and what we need to do is just uplift people because they'll understand and they'll act better. And I don't have the solutions to any of this, but
here's one of the things I noticed, though, is that a lot of this, what we used to call the politically correct stuff, but now that seems too small a word for it, is that a lot of this came out of, there was a whole thing of positive culture, being positive all the time, and not making waves, don't criticize anybody, just be positive. But then after a while, there comes a point at which the people who aren't positive, who are criticizing, are essentially told, you really can't speak because you're not being positive. And I think a lot of what we're seeing today, in a strange sort of sense, is kind of like, I look at it as actually, and I think Tom Holland in his book, Dominion, where he talks about how Christianity still infuses the culture in very weird sorts of ways. And
our culture is founded on it.
I think the positive thinking culture is essentially a riff on certain Christian principles, but taken to a very strange extreme.
Yeah, and I didn't mean to go there.
Oh, no, I don't mind at all. I know you have a complicated history with Christianity, and at one point, did you grow up in a Christian family, or did you become a Christian for a while later? How did that work?
In my household, there was no Christianity. It was 60s and 70s in my house. But with my extended family, there was a big Christian framework there. And I did, eke in and out of church every now and then, but I didn't really become a Christian until I was 20, 21, 22, somewhere in there.
Right.
And I was a Christian for a while. I was very active. I was very well read, very involved. And then I got to seeing more of the faults of systems. It's all about systems.
Right.
Everything that's degrading right now is a process of the systems and them not actually having any foundation. Right? Like when we talk about our country, when we talk about our economics, when we talk about our religion, we have systems that operate on more of a debt leveraging, unsustainable, unethical, like we could waive the rules when we want, but you can't because we make the rules type of thing. That's very dangerous to us all. And the lack of discussion and acceptance from both sides in any like, cultural issue or just from the individual and the church and a church issue. I wish I was smarter to tell you about this, but it's just like, I remember being in a church in Mount Vernon, Washington, and we were all in the gymnasium and we were going through the financial report of the church. And I was an accountant. And I was looking at this and I was going, what a waste. We could stand in the parking lot with nothing. You know what I mean? Like what our faith is not founded upon this economic practice. This economic practice is corrupting our faith. And you know, I was really radical. I don't really hold to that so much
Right.
anymore. You know, things function as they function, but the amount of appalled, like, you're just a young person, you know, we don't need to hear this.
Right.
You know, most complaints have, you know, you look at like a really radical character like Alex Jones. He'll
Right.
say this most outlandish, crazy thing, but then something happens and you go, wow, well, he was way off, but look at the foundation of this, where it comes from. There's something
Right.
there,
Right.
you know,
You kind of saw the cultural captivity or almost emptiness of the church, right?
yeah. I mean, I don't want to be harsh towards the church or anything, but yeah.
Yeah, you can be harsh with the church around me.
Right.
Because I understand it very clearly. I mean, for me, I've seen these very serious cultural problems. I call them cultural problems because a lot of times this stuff just seeps into, you know, Christianity. For instance, when I was younger and I became a Christian through the Jesus movement, and I met all sorts of Christians then, and you never met one person up until near the end of the 70s who ever put gun rights and Christianity together. That was something that really started meshing in the 80s. And but I am sure by the time you became a Christian, suddenly those two were like, you know, it's Jesus and my rifle. You know, it's kind of like, and people don't realize, you know, that's a cultural thing. And it's really, go ahead.
I was, you know, I've been very radical. I change every day, and I don't like being held to what I am today, tomorrow, right? Because I'm learning. It's a process. But I was very radical in the church because I'm like, what are you guys doing supporting our young people going into the military? What does this have to do with faith? We're in the world, not of it. You know what I mean? We subscribe to a morality greater than the moral law. And thereby we don't even need to worry about the law because we're going to obey it because we're obeying something even greater.
Right.
And I always came to like this how are we saying our young people go to war because it's a good? It's not a good.
Yeah.
You know, what you do is you go on a battlefield and you shoot a person and you say, you no longer have the ability to seek the mercy and forgiveness of the Lord. I'm taking that from you now. And I never really could come to terms with how that was Christian at all.
Right.
And again, I don't want to attack people.
Well,
like we all
my feeling is
understand. Yeah,
my feeling is a person can own guns and feel like they should be protecting themselves, and I'm fine with that. But my problem is, as a Christian, is when you put the two together and say, this has to go with that. Then this creates a tension. It also means that certain people are going to look at something like that and say, well, if that's what it takes to believe in God, I'm not going to do that. You see, some people will say that. Well, I have a question for you because I worked with you, you know, we took people on tours together and, you know, you were like going down the raft and stuff. You were kind of in this zone where you were working with people. And then at a certain point, now I could feel, even as I was working with you, that you were kind of like backing up. But when did you make the decision to just kind of like say, nah, I'm just going to stay here and just kind of like scope out the world from my cabin and live like that for a while?
Well, that was more recently. I very much have a hands-off approach to the world right now. I admit, I don't know what's happening, and I'm scared to be involved. And I think it really came down to, so in 2016, we had this crazy bull running in the house and bashing all the chandeliers, right? And I didn't like him. Didn't like him at all because there was, you know, and especially for his first 2 years. So I'd say 2018 when he fired that general and we quit dropping massive drones everywhere without forethought. So in 2018, I started really recognizing the media and digging into the media real hard. And I always knew that the media had been lying because I was very active between 2001 and 2004 towards the right. Right. And in 2018, I started going more active towards the left. And what I've learned is neither side will listen to anything. Mm-hmm. But so I started looking at that, and I was like, well, and then Charlottesville, and I said, hey, they took this clip. And then they're saying all of these crazy, exaggerated things that could be true, but we have no evidence for. All we have is our emotional feeling. Right. And so I kept digging into all these stories over this Trump guy, and I kept digging into all these stories for so many different things of happening. I mean, your number 12 video covered a lot of it because and I started saying, this is wrong, this is lies. And so I started reaching out to people and saying, hey, these are lies. And they would just say, oh, well, you're a racist, or you're wrong, or you're this, or you're that, without actually looking.
Without engaging with what you were trying to say.
Yeah, like I would be saying, hey, you see this news article? This is what they used to report on that news article. Check it out. And they would go, I choose to believe the article. Right? Like this dissidence of I don't know what you would call it, critical thinking. I mean, I wish I was more smart to tell you all the stuff I knew, Byrne.
No, but I find it fascinating, though, that you kind of like backed away from it. It's almost like, and at the same time, you've got your fingers totally in the pie online, you know? And it's a very interesting kind of tension there. And I think that a lot of the people who are, like on my channel, when they watch this, they'll be very curious. They'll ask questions about why. Just to let you know, we've got about 10 minutes left. And because I've only can do this for 40 minutes because I'm on the cheap version of Zoom.
10-4, yeah.
But we can do this.
Well, what I did was I dove way into propaganda to break it.
Right.
I really don't feel that people can understand how their underlying foundational understanding of reality is manipulated. We are all completely manipulated. I am completely manipulated. The whole world is deceived.
Yeah.
And I was just like, we have this underlying belief system that we build our reality upon, but this belief system has no foundation. It is created out of a series of propaganda and lies. And I really had to dive in, spend hours and hours, days and days looking into news sources and media sources and YouTube videos and all these things to break it. Because you can't break it from without. You can't say, I'm going to save that drowning man 100 feet offshore, 20 feet down without getting in the water. Anyway, I'm sorry I interrupted there. Yeah.
Oh, no problem. One of the things I've come to understand over the years is what Jacques Ellul in his book on propaganda, he talks about the fictional panorama. That is to say, and that's what we're presented with, so much of what we see. And I think over the years, it's gotten more fictional. That is to say, it used to be, I said this in How We Got Here, number 12. It used to be, I would read Time magazine or watch CBS, and I would have questions about it, but I knew that something had happened and that they were talking about a thing that had happened. Whereas now we've gotten to the point where, you can watch something and then after a while you're saying, did this happen? And that's a whole different level. So for instance, I started, just contrasting. I've always listened to the entire speeches of people.
Yeah.
Political figures. And then I would listen to the way these things are snipped up and put on the news. And I noticed with Trump, the extreme, disconnect between what he was actually saying in a long form speech and the little sound bites that they were getting from it, and how they were cooking up all of these ideas about what he was saying. Even if he said, I wasn't saying that, they would say, oh, yes, you really were. You're dog whistling to, the white nationalists or whatever. You're really saying this. And, Trump is not the greatest communicator. He's funny. He can communicate to his base. but he's
Well, I
not.
mean, he's throwing punches at everybody I want to throw punches at. You know what
Yeah.
I mean? Like,
Which is why I think he became popular. I didn't get him at first, but later I started seeing like there was a black guy, I can't remember his name, but he was on YouTube and he says, you know, Trump isn't the best president in the world, but he may be exactly the president we need right now. That is
yeah.
because he was essentially not an insider. And
You know, I would like to clarify that I didn't vote for Trump either time.
No, I didn't either.
Yeah, like I wrote in new candidates, please, in 2016, and as I was on my way to the polling station in 2020, a scripture came to my head: "Don't place your trust in these people," and I voted for God.
Right.
And you know, but the pointing to Trump to people, they won't hear it, they won't hear it. But what we have is like what Orwell says in an Animal Farm. We have Democrats wanting more pigs. We have Republicans thinking the solution is more horses. Meanwhile, there's a writing on the wall that is ever changing, and we're not addressing. And we're in serious trouble, and I'm very, very scared for my future. I mean,
what are you scared about?
It's important to say. What's that?
What are you afraid of?
I'm afraid of physical harm and genocide. Quite literally, like all of these things point there. And and in the cover of this virus, they can do it in our faces and not even have us know. You know, I know this is really hyperbolic and really extreme language, and I hope people don't think I'm some kind of radical, but like there are dangers that we have clear signifiers for, that we are ignoring for the sake of being right over another person. And the left and the right both are guilty of this, and I am too. Anyway, yeah, I just want to let people know, like, I'm a very caring person who would give you the shirt off of my back, and
I would
and that's what should be.
I would agree with that. You've been a good plan. Well, look, we got a few more minutes here before I sign off. But so, what do you think? What do you want to do? Let us say what? Yeah, how? Like you're in a situation now where you've kind of got yourself out in the middle of, but it's not that far. I mean, I know where you are. But
people have a misunderstanding of Alaska. It's a place like every other place.
Yeah. But you know, do you have an idea of how to resolve your tensions at all? The tension between, you know, all the stuff and at the same time wanting to be alone. My feeling is people need each other. You know,
I'm a very social person who needs people, and I want nothing more than to be in town every day, to be at a bonfire playing my guitar and saying my poetry. You know, this is what I like. I love human beings. I'm fascinated by them, endlessly fascinated by them. But, you know, I've given up almost. I've almost lost this because, like, for so many years, I've been reaching the people who were my best friends. And my cat's crazy. Reaching people who are my best friends, and being shunned and removed. And I'm not a hermit by choice anymore. I'm a hermit because I've been isolated, because I've been saying, did you hear that NPR news radio? Yeah, well, guess what? It wasn't true. And they're like, well, you are obviously a Trumper, you know, and everybody calls me a Trumper now, and pushes me away. And what I really want, the thing I want the most is for people to love one another. I mean, it's not ridiculously hard to be nice.
Right.
You know, it isn't. It's actually simple.
Yeah.
You know,
well, it's gotten quite tribal. One of the reasons why I appreciate being here in Tbilisi, Georgia, is because I'm not in the States anymore. And
yeah,
so
I'm jealous.
When I talk to people about the stuff happening in America, none of them are on the, well, which side are you on kind of thing. You know, more of them are just simply like, oh, that's really interesting. You know, it's kind of like they're interested to talk about it, because it doesn't. I have the feeling that if I was in America, particularly, you know, through 2020 and up to the present, there were just all these implications. I mean, I read Facebook posts by people. I read someone today, a friend of mine. I wouldn't mind seeing him again someday. But he was saying, you know, I travel across the country because he's a musician, and I meet these people who, and he says they politicize the virus and everything. And then he goes on like a long screed politicizing the thing, and I'm going like, and I want to write something. Then I see he's got 300 comments. I'm going, no point.
Yeah, I am the same. I have said things, posted things, done things that I later regret. Because we are all doing the best we can in an inflammatory environment, and the stress gets on you and you just want to scream, and all you can scream is what you know.
Right.
And so I'm sorry for being I don't really view these propagated people as any different than me.
No, to me, one of the most important things for everyone is you have to realize that you are not impervious to the propaganda. Once you start there, then you can start to figure out, okay, so how do I deal with this information and make myself more of a human being and not a tribal creature? Okay, well, I'm gonna kind of cut it there because I've got about 2 minutes. I don't want. Do you have any last thoughts before I get out of here?
I just wish I had more time to talk because
we will do it again.
Much to say.
Yeah, we'll do it again. And and I'll probably
maybe I'll write something.
I looked and it said if I wanted to upgrade this Zoom thing, it would cost me $250. And I was like, I don't want to do that today. Let me think about it. Maybe there's another plan that doesn't require that. So
if I had it, I'd give it. I can't think of a more worthy use of my money is what you do, Yeah.
So anyway, thanks for spending time with us, Ashley. And I'm sure this is going to prompt a lot of people to say, oh, this guy in Alaska, that's really interesting. So, we'll
www.mindworld.blog, dig through the archives, choose your favorite date between 2018 and now, and watch my uneducated poetry.
And I'll put a link to that below. Okay, so take care, Ashley. And
hey, man, nice to talk to you.
Well, there you have it. It was a short conversation, shorter than I wanted. Shorter. I think there was a lot more to say, but we'll probably get back to Ashley in the next month or two. I'm just starting to use this Zoom thing on my side, and they only let you do 40 minutes for free, and then after that they wanted to charge me $250 for an upgrade, and I decided, no, I don't want to do that. So, nevertheless, I'll do some of these shorter videos with people. Some people have Zoom on their end, and they can contact me, and then I can talk longer. Ashley didn't. So I hope you appreciated that. I find Ashley to be a very independent thinker, and I thought you folks might want to be exposed to his thoughts as well. And, well, this is Byrne in Tbilisi, Georgia, saying Kagad ik avi, which means be well. And remember, Anadromous is a word which relates to salmon swimming back against the stream to go home. Do that. Swim up against the currents.
A people without history is not redeemed from time. For history is a pattern of timeless moments.